The Chancellor has been accused by the Conservatives of lying to the public over the financial black hole.
Rachel Reeves, she's been accused of misleading the British public by allegedly cooking up a £20 billion black hole that simply didn't exist.
Conservatives have levelled accusations against the Chancellor of deceiving the public regarding the fiscal deficit. Rachel Reeves stands accused of misleading British citizens by allegedly fabricating a £20 billion deficit that never existed. It was completely astonishing. Just moments ago, Rachel Reeves was caught in what may be the largest financial deception in British parliamentary history. The Chancellor faces allegations of a colossal £22 billion fraud. On live television, she's frantically attempting to argue her calculations were misunderstood, but it's pointless. The documentation has surfaced. Demonstrators outside Westminster are demanding her immediate removal from office. News outlets are buzzing with speculation of an impending Supreme Court action. When you addressed the nation on November the 4th, you cautioned that everyone would need to contribute toward filling this fiscal deficit. But you were already aware at that precise moment that the OBR had calculated that your proposals at that stage, let's be absolutely clear, the proposals you'd submitted at that stage would generate a surplus of £4 billion. Why did you deceive the country? I'm a Labour Chancellor. I want to eliminate child poverty. I offer no apologies for that. I just questioned you. Did you deceive? Of course I didn't. This past Saturday, Rachel Reeves was completely blindsided during a live broadcast. She faces accusations of manufacturing a £22 billion fiscal hole in the national accounts. The host stared directly into her eyes. Exploiting this financial deception, you authorised a devastating £30 billion assault on taxpayers. And then arrived the instant that might destroy her political future. The Chancellor stumbled through a disorganised justification, frantically attempting to cite productivity revisions while completely ignoring the £4.2 billion positive balance glaring back at her. Without mercy, the interviewer displayed the official OBR documentation, establishing she was completely informed of the positive financial position weeks before choosing to plunder the public. Her defence was catastrophic. This represents the inheritance from the preceding 14 years. The Conservatives bear responsibility. Critics are now declaring that this wasn't a mathematical mistake, but a deliberate theft to transfer resources from productive enterprises to social welfare for recent migrants. Furious retirees are discovering their winter heating subsidies were confiscated based on an absolute fabrication engineered to penalise them. In Westminster, Keir Starmer feigned ignorance. At this juncture, there isn't sufficient evidence. This is the identical individual who vigorously supported Rachel Reeves 12 months earlier. Now he remains completely silent. The opposition argues that due to a £22 billion deception, he may be forced to step down alongside her. As Rachel Reeves exited Parliament, she was confronted by American media representatives. She pretended she desperately needed to answer an urgent call and swiftly entered her protected vehicle. Simultaneously, Nigel Farage is mounting an aggressive campaign. A Supreme Court inquiry is inevitable, he declares. He reminds everyone that the Prime Minister's closest ally, Angela Rayner, was implicated this autumn in a coastal property controversy valued at $800,000. The scandal that compelled her swift resignation. He states that Rachel Reeves now faces only two possibilities. Either she steps down voluntarily or the Supreme Court intervenes. This represents the bleakest period in Labour's existence, he maintains. Angela Rayner has departed. Starmer's public support is reaching unprecedented lows, and observers caution that if Rachel Reeves ultimately confronts legal proceedings, it could annihilate the party completely. If the Chancellor falsely claims the nation faces bankruptcy when we actually maintain a surplus, does that constitute treason or simply criminal negligence? This official orchestrated an enormous redistribution of capital from private industry to government benefits. How many additional billions stay hidden in the shadows? Commentary experts are unrelenting. The interview has transformed into a viral phenomenon, with millions observing the precise instant her falsehoods collapsed on live television. She tried to conceal herself behind the justification of a productivity revision. But the presenter destroyed this defence by referencing the wage expansion statistics she deliberately overlooked. Experts are validating the nation's deepest anxieties that the tax increase on small enterprises was deliberately designed to finance a massive enlargement of the welfare apparatus. Starmer's silence is thunderous, causing many to suspect he was the mastermind of this fraud from the absolute beginning. Constitutional legal scholars are now examining whether deliberately misleading Parliament regarding the nation's economic position represents a criminal violation. Her condescension during the transmission was unmistakable, rejecting legitimate inquiries about the $4.2 billion surplus, as though the public possessed no entitlement to information. Backbench Labour representatives are secretly informing reporters that the scheme has collapsed, and they are petrified of confronting their voters this weekend. Demands calling for her immediate termination have accumulated over 132,000 signatures in 7 hours. If this deception is permitted to persist, no subsequent budget can ever be believed, throwing the UK into a perpetual condition of financial distrust. Hit that subscribe button if you're tired of politicians thinking they can lie straight to your face and get away with it, because we're exposing every single deception they try to pull. Following the television humiliation, Kemi Badenoch initiated a devastating offensive in the House of Commons that left government seats paralysed. The Conservative leader positioned herself directly across from the Chancellor and charged her with directing a systematic campaign of fabrications to steal from British citizens. "You have systematically deceived the public for months," she roared, cornering Reeves regarding the falsified calculations. Badenoch mercilessly revealed the budget as a calculated wealth seizure, branding it a budget for handouts that penalises honest labour. Keir Starmer appeared physically nauseated as his adversary demolished the ethical basis of his government systematically. Every justification the Chancellor attempted to offer about the deficit was countered with an avalanche of evidence regarding the concealed surplus. Witnesses observed that Reeves seemed to diminish in her position as Badenoch mocked her catastrophic television appearance. "This is not inadequacy. This is a deliberate decision to burden our descendants with obligations," was the statement that hushed the chamber. Abruptly, Reeves introduced a fresh defensive strategy. She attempted to recycle her familiar approach. With moisture in her eyes, she maintained that as a female politician, she had been saddled with extraordinarily demanding obligations and requested others to envision themselves in her situation. A social media video of her weeping accumulated 8.2 million views in merely 4 hours. It might have succeeded with someone else, but facing her was another woman. Kemi Badenoch responded, "This is the most pitiful response one could conceivably receive." She continued that Reeves understood perfectly what it signified to occupy the third most influential position in Britain. Observers are characterising this as the most savage parliamentary annihilation of a Chancellor in contemporary history. Badenoch demanded clarification why working mothers should finance larger households on welfare, an inquiry Reeves declined to address. Her methodical examination established that Labour's complete economic blueprint is constructed on a foundation of fabrication and betrayal. Government backbenchers examined their footwear, incapable of protecting their leader against such a devastating Badenoch emphasised that joblessness has increased every single month since Reeves assumed control, demonstrating her strategies are destructive. The Iron Chancellor assertion was ridiculed continuously, with Badenoch proposing she is simply a marionette for the unions. According to sources, government communications specialists are labouring ceaselessly to erase the budget documentation from the internet. But the evidence is already spreading across every digital platform. This is no longer purely about financial policy. It is an ethical catastrophe where the government is confiscating from the industrious to purchase the allegiance of the dependent recent arrivals. Political tacticians have exposed the malicious reasoning behind Labour's wager. A merciless operation to seize capital from the productive minority to manipulate a dependent majority with welfare distributions. When challenged on this particular allegation by an unrelenting television anchor, Rachel Reeves descended to a humiliating display of performance, claiming her audio device had malfunctioned to evade responding to the charge. Social media networks are presently collapsing, with millions of enraged Britons inundating her accounts to accuse both her and Starmer of the most staggering duplicity in living memory. The Chancellor exhibited a shocking failure to grasp elementary mathematics during the interview. Despite having devoted years instructing business proprietors on the significance of contributing their equitable portion, television presenters are now explicitly declaring that the public is consumed with fury because they were intentionally manipulated by their own government. Her justification disintegrated on live television, vacillating between asserting the economy was destroyed to confessing she dismissed the positive OBR information, modifying her account with every challenging question. Commentators are attacking the contradictory standards, spotlighting how Reeves previously demanded resignations for trivial administrative mistakes, yet now clutches to authority after inventing a £30 billion emergency. The commitment to economic stability appears meaningless when the designer of the approach stumbles over a shortfall that she created from absolute fiction. Masses assembling in London are insisting to discover if the Prime Minister was an active accomplice in this deception alongside his principal associate. While Starmer displays a facade of tranquility, sources reveal that Number 10 is in a condition of absolute hysteria, participating in a comprehensive concealment initiative. The complete nation is now consolidated in revulsion against this government. Pensioners were compelled to freeze in the darkness, selecting between nourishment and heating, while the self-declared advocate of the working population was possessing a budget surplus she refused to recognise. This magnitude of betrayal has initiated a tectonic transformation in public sentiment, leaving Starmer terrified that the escalating wave of outrage will compel a premature election he is fated to forfeit. Financial experts observe a nation deteriorating under the burden of unprecedented tax obligations, with the farming industry in rebellion and capital fleeing the UK. The Prime Minister is paralysed, deprived of all ethical legitimacy to lead because his Chancellor's controversy has revealed the corruption at the foundation of his agenda. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you believe Rachel Reeves should resign immediately? Or should she face criminal charges first? Let me know what you think. Households are frightened for their economic existence. Opposition commanders recognise that against this landscape of deterioration, the puzzle of the vanishing billions is the catalyst that will trigger an uprising. She displays her difficult choices in a frantic attempt for compassion. Nevertheless, critics interpret this as a calculated demonstration that constituents are dismissing with total disdain. Manufactured tears cannot erase the contamination of such a monumental treachery. She presented herself as a reliable guardian of the economy, but the nation now condemns the moment they believed her, understanding she was ransacking the precise resources she promised to protect. The Chancellor's invention of the £22 billion shortfall is simply the most deafening warning signal in an inferno devouring the government. Distinguished television presenters now comprehend that this calculation is not a computational mistake, but a shattered sacred contract with the electorate that can never be repaired. When the Director of the Treasury fabricates artificial losses to impose suffering on the population, the state immediately surrenders any ethical authority to extract taxes. That horrifying understanding is presently driving Keir Starmer to the edge of a total psychological breakdown. Critics are persistent, observing that the government hoped the budget news rotation would conceal the deception, but instead it has dumped accelerant on the flames. Constituents now establish a direct connection between her fraud and their diminished resources, motivating reporters to pursue the cabinet until the final moment. The Prime Minister is completely conscious that the nation perceives his integrity as being equally bankrupt as Reeves's fraudulent calculations. Petitions for instant removal are ascending exponentially, riding a tsunami of rage predetermined to submerge this regime. Concurrently, critical reports validate King Charles was observed reaching Balmoral under the protection of nightfall. Observers described a procession of darkened automobiles penetrating the property during late evening hours. Windows on the elevated floors stayed lit as silhouettes moved repeatedly in what resembled an emergency conference. By sunrise, the blinds were suddenly sealed completely. A viral recording is detonating across digital platforms, accumulating millions of interactions, displaying a demonstrator on Downing Street bellowing, "Your Majesty, terminate this corrupt Parliament immediately." For 9 excruciating hours, the palace has preserved an absolute silence. Royal journalists cautioned that when the Crown offers nothing during a constitutional catastrophe, it indicates the emergency is far more lethal than the public comprehends. Labour guaranteed a fresh beginning of honesty, but provided a financial robbery disguised in official documentation. That £30 billion seizure exists as an everlasting monument to their treachery. Every principal publication is connecting Starmer's administration to a synchronised economic deception. The illusion of competence has exploded to reveal a frightened clique maintaining office through fabrication. Starmer understands too belatedly that the difficult decisions story collapses catastrophically when the crisis was manufactured. The public is demanding accountability, and legal organisations are constructing a prosecution for the Supreme Court. Yet, if the Prime Minister imagined concealment would generate peace, he is completely delusional because the resistance is only beginning. Rachel Reeves has declined to resign in humiliation. Instead, she has initiated a vicious offensive against the press. Maintaining the independent statistics are defective, and she exclusively possesses the truth. She is utilising the instruments of the state, compelling civil officials to eliminate any opposition regarding her fabricated calculations. Subscribe now because this scandal is only getting bigger, and you need to stay ahead of every twist and turn as this government collapses. Journalists are frantic to disclose the uncensored documents to stabilise the markets, but Reeves perceives this as a battle for her political survival. She has constructed a dangerous barrier of secrecy with the cabinet's extremist faction, transforming instantaneously from a mundane administrator into a defiant autocrat of finance. It is the supreme act of manipulation. A politician who attempted to deceive the country into poverty is now shrieking that journalists are destroying the economy by presenting elementary questions. Revelations indicate Starmer is physically trembling with terror.